Welcome to our meet and greet. Today we are happy to interview a house inspector. Welcome to Chuck Cheriton from Guardian Home Inspections.
Correct.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. So we have a number of questions for you, and right off the bat, if you could tell us in the state of Wisconsin, Chuck, who is qualified to
A home inspector in the state of Wisconsin has to go through some training, so 40 hours of education, which is relatively new. We never used to have to. And then you have to pass a national exam and a state exam. And then, of course, you have to do background checks and stuff. But once all that stuff is completed, they give you a certificate saying that you can go out and look at a house.
Okay. All right. So it's actually a certification then.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So in order to handle the home inspection, you have to actually be certified
Correct.
in the state of Wisconsin. Okay, great. And how do you suggest to homeowners that they prepare for their home inspection to be done?
Well, a lot of times the home inspector can't do, they're limited because if the house is full of furniture and stuff like that. So my recommendation would be always to leave the furnace accessible, the electric panel accessible, and the attic access accessible. Other than that, we understand that people live there, so there's going to be things in the way. But again, if you follow the guidelines for the state, there's certain things that we can and can't do. So as long as they leave those areas open so the home inspector can get to them, then they can inspect them.
Okay, and that kind of leads into our next question, and that is, are there certain things that as a buyer we shouldn't expect that you're going to inspect?
Normally, again, if we can get to it, we're gonna inspect it, following the state standards. So, a lot of times people will call and they say, well, we have 2 or 3 barns or outbuildings. Okay, some of those aren't inspected unless they pay a special fee. Myself and my company usually will inspect it as long as it's got power going to it, whether they pay a fee or not. So, but there is sometimes an additional cost to do those things. It's not an automatic.
Okay.
But as far as the house goes, what we can get to, we inspect.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And who do you recommend is present at the house inspection?
Definitely the buyers. The buyers, it's very educational. It tells them, I like to show them what the maintenance is coming up, how to change the furnace filter, cleaning the gutters, that type of thing. But the agents also. The agent, as we're doing our reporting and send the report out, the agent is reading something now. But if they're there firsthand, they can actually see what I've written in the report, and I'll put 2 and 2 together. So otherwise I get phone calls.
And so that leads into another question, and that is your thoughts on a pre-inspect, because so far our conversations have been centered around inspections with buyers, and a pre-inspection, of course, is when the seller hires you to come through before even they might put their house on the market to do a pre-inspect on their behalf. What are your thoughts on that?
Pre-inspections are beneficial to everybody involved because it gives the buyer paperwork to say that's when it's been done, but it ultimately gives the seller paperwork that says these are the items you may want to address or they're going to come up again later. And again, it's the same type of an inspection. There's nothing changes, just the word pre and inspection changes. So again, I do go back and do an inspection for the buyer after the thing, but again, there's another cost involved.
Okay, so in the case of a pre-inspect, then when the buyer comes in the picture, we've got an offer to purchase, you can then come back and the buyer can hire you to come back. And of course, there's a cost for that.
Correct.
Makes sense.
And a lot of times it's just to go over the things that we found the first time.
Sure.
And whether they were or were not repaired.
Sure.
Okay? And again, it's a minimal cost to do that.
Okay, and what a great way to handle that then, because now that buyer can confirm that those things have been properly corrected.
Right, but then the seller too can have things fixed so it doesn't come up and catch him later.
Exactly. Exactly. How do you determine the cost, your cost for home inspections?
I do it by square footage. I have a base price and then square footage over that. And then, again, it's not a whole lot of change, but it's by the square footage.
Okay.
And then outbuildings and things like that. typically, again, I tell my clients I'll do a courtesy inspection on the barn, but I will check the power. Everything else is, a visual look at the structure mechanic, that type of thing. So again, that cost is very, very minimal.
Okay. And what are some of the most common items you're finding today in your home inspections?
I would have to say electrical, furnace, roofing problems, and structure. There's not a whole lot of structural issues, but when there is an issue, there's an issue, and it needs to be taken care of. Furnaces, again, I look at furnaces, water heaters, ACs, and roofing as, today we have a lot of what I call disposable homes. So a homeowner buys a house, lives there for 15 to 20 years. It's now time to do the maintenance and replacing. So they put it on the market and they sell it. Well, that's perfect for the buyers because now they know that they have to budget for a furnace, a water heater, maybe some roof shingles. But again, in that 20 to 25 year range, shingles are probably needed to be replaced. So when we come in there, we can tell them what condition it is and how, what the cost is going to be. Not necessarily the dollar amount, but it is costly sometimes, expensive.
Interesting terminology, disposable home, right?
And that's what we're seeing more and more.
Okay.
It's not the 70s house, the 80s house, 90s house. It's the ones that are built in 2000 on up that are becoming flip houses.
So is that reflective on maybe homeowners that aren't doing anything throughout their ownership, do you think?
Correct. And they
Okay.
don't want to do anything. They'd rather go buy another house. In my opinion. That's
Okay.
my opinion. And I see that a lot.
Okay. Are there some commonly found things that maybe aren't costly for homeowners to keep up with?
Oh yeah, your general maintenance on the outside of the house. Clean your gutters, do your caulking, touch up the paint if there's any. Well, today all houses are maintenance free, right? But you have a few out there that still have paint and trim work and stuff like that. Older houses, people expect older houses to have some issues. Whether it is a wooden siding, wooden trim and stuff, it needs painting, it needs upkeep, that type of thing. But people expect that. They don't expect that in a newer house, right? So, and then there's a few shortcuts that we're finding that the real estate, I shouldn't say the real estate, the contractors, the builders end of it aren't keeping up with. Whether it is water flashings, caulking, that type of thing. They'd rather caulk everything than put in a water channel, right? So again, that leads to more problems. So if the maintenance is kept up, there shouldn't be any problems, but a lot of times it's not.
Certainly, that makes sense. So one of the things that I noticed, and Jessica, I don't know if you noticed this too from your experience, just about every home inspection I go to, grading comes up. Negative grade on the foundation.
Which is the easiest fix in the world.
So what do you suggest for homeowners day to day?
Well, grading becomes something that you want to check out every year. Every year, walk around your house. Check your grading, check your caulking, cracking, stuff like that.
Your downspouts.
Downspouts are attached, okay? Or check your gutters, make sure they're clean 2-3 times a year. Roof shingles, go up to the roof and clean the debris off. Clean the leaves, clean the sticks off from the trees that fell or branches that fell off. It's simple maintenance that can be done.
So it's those kinds of things versus the expectation of bringing in, a load of dirt and bringing it all around the foundation and regrading your entire foundation around.
That's when it's left too long.
Okay, got it. Okay. So that's the fix after you haven't done all of the things you just mentioned.
Just because your flower bed looks nice doesn't mean that the grading isn't going towards the home.
Yeah. So it's watching the other thing
Right.
to keep those kinds of things.
And some people don't realize too that mulch isn't grading. Mulch is for more beautification than anything. So if you dump years and years of mulch against the foundation, your soil's still going like that. So again, do it yearly rather than every 3, 4 to 5 years.
So mulch is that top layer.
Correct.
Okay.
Mulch is the top layer.
Got it. And you may have mentioned a number of these things, but the most costly items that you find today.
Well, and if it's a structure thing, that can get real costly, whether it's the basement, whether it's a broken trusses in the attic, or a homeowner inadvertently cut a truss, and those things that can't be done sometimes are done. So those things can get very costly. I guess the biggest thing would be in a regular house would be the roof. That's the costly item. Furnaces and water heaters, I mean, they're all $5,000, but the roof, foundation issues.
And the furnace and central air, and water heater, those are all expectations and have a life expectancy.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the roof in a
The
way
roof
too,
does but if it's cleaned yearly, take a look at yearly, you can deter a lot of that unexpected cost.
keep branches off the roof line if you possibly can.
Or the leaves out of the valley and that type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that you would like people to know that you think would be helpful?
From a standpoint of a home inspector, you had hit on what the seller can do to help us out. Make sure things are available, accessible, that we can get to. And as far as the buyer, yeah, come to the inspection. Plan on being there at least 3 hours. It may not take 3 hours, but at least 3 hours. And come to learn.
Right. It's a wonderful education about the home that they're going to be purchasing.
Correct, yeah.
So,
And they're gonna be living there, so they might as well know how it works.
right. And then they're going to understand what you have put in your report.
Correct.
That they're going to see and go, what did he mean?
Yeah, and the reports are different out there depending on which company you're going with, but there's always a summary page.
Mm-hmm.
And the summary page is gonna hit defects, maintenance items to a certain degree, larger maintenance, things like that, and safety issues. So they should take the time to read the whole report, not just the summary page. And that's where a lot of people get lost, is because the report is 30 to 50 pages long, we got this one page that I can read and then that fixes everything. No, it doesn't. You still got your maintenance, you still got other things to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Jessica and I want to thank you again for coming in. Chuck Cheriton from Guardian Home Inspections. Thanks for being part of our meet and greet today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.